Hi, welcome to week 5 of Marketing Your Consultancy. I'm really excited about this week because I feel like it's the first week where you're going to take all of the understanding, the research that you've done, and put it together into an authentic outreach strategy that is going to help you grow your practice. So you're going to see, hopefully, the fruits of all your labor. As usual, let's go ahead and start with the centering exercise. So go ahead and get comfortable in your chair, roll your shoulders around, and slowly close your eyes. You're going to take 5 deep breaths at your own pace. Just really get centered and grounded in your body. When you inhale, feel the rush of air going into your nose, your mouth, your lungs. Notice the impact on your body. Notice that you're here in this moment at this time. When you exhale, feel the air coming out of your body. You may even, if you're observant enough, notice the change in temperature as your breath comes in and out. A nice, deep inhalation and exhalation. A couple more. Open your eyes when you're ready. And let's begin. So, before we launch into helping you create your strategy this week, there is a principle of behavior change, a formula for behavior change that I want to introduce to you because I think it's really helpful when you start to think about your outreach plan, because it gives you a new way maybe of looking at things rather than thinking of only one element of behavior. Because ultimately what you are trying to do when you do outreach is encourage a certain behavior from clients who are a good fit for you. And that behavior ultimately is working with you if they're a good fit. So this model will give you a good framework to kind of assess your efforts. As a nice bonus, I think this behavior change model is helpful not only when you're thinking about marketing, but even for your own habits and behaviors of your own that you might be trying to start or stop. And if you happen to work with clients on anything related to behavior change, this model I think might also be helpful that you could weave into your client work. So the model itself is called B equals M times A times T. That's B equals MAT. This is the B.J. Fogg behavior change model. He's a researcher out of Stanford University, and he has distilled every behavior down to 3 essential elements. Rather than give those to you right off the bat, I'd like to do a thought exercise. So go ahead and think about a time when you got a phone call but you didn't answer. So what I'm going to have you do is kind of brainstorm reasons that you didn't answer the phone. Now, go ahead and take a minute or two to jot down reasons. Some questions people often have are, well, did I see the phone ring or not? I'm not going to answer that. In some scenarios you may have, in some scenarios you may not. The basic question is just, your phone rings, you don't answer it. What are some reasons why? When you're ready to get started again, go ahead and pause now and brainstorm some things and click play when you're ready. Okay, So hopefully you've jotted down a few things. What I'm going to do is go kind of element by element in these three elements of behavior and kind of illustrate some of the reasons in that category that that might have fallen within that category. So first, if you had anything related to maybe not recognizing the number and therefore thinking it might be a telemarketer, or it being your ex-boyfriend, or maybe even, God forbid, it being a family member, and that decreasing your motivation for wanting to take the call at that moment, that all falls within the first bucket, which is called motivation. M stands for motivation. So anytime you have a targeted behavior, you obviously have to be motivated to do that behavior. Simply enough. Okay, so the second category, A. If you had anything related to being on a bus or a train and not being able to pick up the phone, or wanting to chat with someone but thinking, oh, it's a longer conversation, I want to do this later, I don't have time right now, or that you're at work, you don't have time to take a personal call, all of that would fall within the category of A, which is ability. So you have the motivation to take that call. You want to talk to that person. It's just something about your circumstances and the environment is making you unable to take the call at that time. So this is the second element of behavior, ability. You have to be able to do something even if you're motivated to do it. So third is T. Now, if you had anything in your brainstorm list about the phone being off, if the phone is silent and you didn't see it, the phone was in another room, you didn't hear it, that all falls within the third category, which is trigger. So even when you're motivated to do something and you have the ability to do it, you have to be triggered to do it in order for a behavior to actually happen. Now, that trigger could be silent. It could be that you just thought of it because of something else, or you had set a reminder for yourself. The trigger doesn't always have to be a physical thing. However, in order for a behavior to happen, you do have to have a trigger of some sort. So that's it. That's the BJ Fogg model of behavior change. But one thing that's important is that even though it's not the most complicated formula, it does involve multiplication between each of those three things. So the formula is B equals M times A times T. And the point there, the reason those aren't plus signs for addition, is that if any one of those things doesn't happen, the desired behavior won't occur. So you always need all three elements to come together at the same time in order for a targeted behavior to happen. Okay? So let's talk a little bit about how this is relevant to you as someone who is growing a consultancy. One, I find that people often intuitively understand the first category of motivation. We're very good at thinking in our own heads about what might motivate our clients, or thinking like if they don't choose us, it's because they weren't motivated to do so. But people often neglect the second and the third elements of behavior, and those are ability and triggers. So one thing that's important to keep in mind, take a look at this kind of graphic of behavior change, is that motivation and ability are somewhat trade-offs. So if someone is highly motivated to do something, then it might be that the thing is not particularly easy to do, but the behavior could still occur. But if they're not highly motivated to do something, it has to be a lot easier for them to do in order for the behavior to happen. So if you take that back to thinking about your outreach plan, you have to think about not only how do I convince someone that this is a good solution for them, but also how do I make it as easy as possible for them to either indicate interest or try it out. And then the third thing with triggers is just ensuring that even if someone is motivated to do it and it's easy enough for them to do, making sure that they're triggered or asked to do so, or are able to opt into communications where they might be able to say, hey, I'm not ready right now, but I'm interested in hearing more from you. So that you can trigger them in the future to see if that is a good time. So that's really how B equals M times A times T, the Fogg behavior change model, applies to your outreach strategy. But I think it applies not only to how you think about engaging with clients, but also how you approach your own almost schedule for doing outreach. Because one thing that's very common in consultancies is a boom or bust cycle of work. So you're super busy sometimes, maybe you even have way too much work, you wish there was someone else around to take it off your shoulders, and then other times you're kind of, there's a trough of work, you have a lot of free time. So there, BJ Fogg also talks about something called a motivation wave, where it's very natural for your motivation over time to increase and decrease about doing the targeted behavior. I would argue that in the case of a consultancy, not only does your motivation go up and down in terms of how much time you're willing to allocate to outreach efforts, but also your actual ability to do so varies widely, because sometimes you're super busy with clients and sometimes you're not. But what's inevitable is if you only spend time when you are in those trough periods on outreach or developing your practice, then you're only kind of exacerbating that boom or bust cycle. So I think what's important is to design an outreach strategy that kind of, to some extent, takes this into account. One thing we'll be doing in the worksheet that we cover later is talking about how much time that thing is going to take you to do every week, various types of outreach. And one thing that can be good to do is have a few things that you're prioritizing that are a small amount of commitment every week, and also to have in your back pocket some things that you are excited about doing, maybe like writing an ebook, but that's something that you save for those periods that you have a bit more time for. So I hope that's a good introduction into the Fogg behavior change model. If you find this interesting, BJ Fogg has a lot more material online. His last name is spelled Fogg. You can just Google it. His research lab is out of Stanford. And I found it very helpful as I think through, how do you ensure that your outreach efforts are as optimal as possible, and also when applying it to my own life.